And welcome back to another episode of the Sports Nerds. I am Dawson Livingston, and filling in for the one and only Brock Beirman is one of my high school friends, one of my longtime friends, Braden Beenken. Braden, how you feeling tonight?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
Hey, nothing better right now. NFL season's in swing. NBA just started off last night as we're recording this. Got 10, 11 more games on tonight, so it's probably peak sports season. You got MLB playoffs, which I don't really pay attention to too much, but they're happening.
Yeah,
Hockey's getting
and
ready to
hockey, I
start.
think. Yeah.
College football is in like the swing of things. I know you're pretty pumped as an Iowa State fan, being 7-0.
Yep.
So you got something to look forward to with that. Um,
Once.
but yeah, uh, we're just gonna get right into it. The first thing I want to talk about is the big bombshell that dropped before I was even awake. I'm sure before you were awake. Well, maybe not before you were awake, but certainly before I was awake.
News.
And that is DeAndre Hopkins going to the Kansas City Chiefs for a fifth round pick. Braden, I want to know your
I
instant reaction and instant thoughts to that.
yeah, I think it was I thought I saw a conditional fourth, maybe a fifth. I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the Chiefs if you don't make this trade, I mean as long as Juju's gone, what's your receiver core looking like? Justin Watson, Sky Moore.
It's rough hours,
Like
bro. It's
I
rough.
could not name another receiver on that Chiefs team that
Nico
is healthy.
Hardman.
Okay, yeah. Miko, I forgot about Miko Hardman. I don't know how I forgot about Miko
But
Hardman.
outside of
The
that,
bane of
dude,
my
it's
existence.
it's a struggle. Then you're looking at practice squad guys, which
Yeah,
they're practice squad guys for a reason. They shouldn't be playing NFL ball quite yet. But
yeah,
I mean, we've had three huge wide receiver moves in the last 2 weeks. Obviously, I'm referring to Devontae Adams going to the Jets for a second round pick. We have Amari Cooper going to the Bills for a third round pick, and now uh, DeAndre Hopkins to Kansas City. All these contenders are loading up. Well, I don't know if you call the Jets contenders, but teams are trying to gear up for the playoffs and certainly contend for something. But I don't know, dude. Kansas City, they find another way to get a player who once was in his prime and is probably on the tail end of his career, but still I feel like can be an impact player. I was thinking that if this team was in 2017 or 2018, this would be the greatest team of all time. Like a prime DeAndre
yeah,
Hopkins, prime Kareem Hunt, prime Juju, prime Travis Kelsey. Like if this team was back when I was in high school, this was going to be an amazing team. Right now, I don't know. It's but some of the players are a little bit older. Some of them have regressed a little bit, but
hey, as long as you have Patrick Mahomes, you're going to be one of the top two teams in the league, probably. So trying to give him
I
as many mouths to feed as possible is the best thing you could do, and they did that for
right
like
and
about pennies.
I couldn't agree more. And with the news today that Marquise Brown could be back before the postseason, which could be huge for Kansas City. So we'll see. Hopkins' stats on the year. He, granted, hasn't had great quarterback play, but 21 targets, 15 receptions, 173 yards, one touchdown in 6 games. So not crazy good stats, but I think me and you both know the quarterback situation going on in Tennessee right now.
Yeah, I think he's getting a bit of an upgrade going from the meme god Will Levis to Patrick Mahomes.
Certainly the best quarterback he's played with since Deshaun Watson, and I think me and you both believe that Mahomes is better than any point that Watson was in his career. But moving on, as much as I would love to talk Chiefs all day, let's recap some of the Week 7 news. Uh, Thursday night game, nothing, nothing really to talk about. Saints get blown out by 23 points in Drew Brees' retirement or jersey retirement. Not a good look for the Saints fans. Denver looked pretty competent, except I mean, I don't know. Bo Nix isn't still have a he doesn't have crazy stats quite yet, but they're winning games. They're 4-3. It's above 500. Can't ask too much. What were your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I mean the Saints look rough, man. What you starting Spencer Rattler? I think he was looking so bad they put Jake Hayner out there just to see what they had. Uh, like what Bub means was a receiver that got action.
Yeah,
So they're
it's it's rough hours out there
it's rough
for
hours in Sin City. I tell you what,
and I thought it was either
that's Las Vegas.
Monday or Sunday when this news broke out, but I saw that Kamara signed a 2-year extension with the Saints. But again, they're so financially strapped up with cash the next few years that I doubt he makes it to the end of that extension. But we'll see. We'll see.
All he did was make it even harder for him to end his career with a ring. As much as I hate to say it, he's a great player, but if you stay on the Saints for any longer, you're not winning much other than maybe 6 games.
Right, and the Saints are piled up with injuries. I believe the Thursday night game they were out 3 or 4 offensive linemen, 2 or 3 receivers. Obviously, Derek Carr being out. So Saints right now, after starting 2-0, I believe are what 2-5. Is that the right record?
That sounds right. Yeah, they haven't won since they went 2-0 and looked like Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah, after they beat the Cowboys by what 30, they really haven't looked great since then. Next game was a game over in Europe. Was the Jags and the Patriots. I don't know about you, but I did not wake up to watch this game, so I can't.
No.
I can't really talk about this one too much. It looks like the Jags finally had something going on offense. Dominant running attack by Tank Bigsby. Dearness Johnson got some carries. I believe ETN was out of this game, but it didn't seem to really matter. The rookie Brian Thomas led the Jags in receiving with 5 catches, almost 90 yards and a touchdown. Jags get a much-needed win, especially with maybe potentially Doug Peterson's job on the line. Who knows? If they keep dropping games, he might be out of a job sooner rather than later. But, yeah, you got anything else you want to add to this game?
No. I mean, you're watching two bottom feeders play in Europe. Tell you what, we have not been nice to London in history. I mean, I can't think of a good game we took overseas.
I honestly, now that you say that, I can't really either. We'll just keep that recap short. Some of the other notable games: Seattle beat Atlanta 34-14. Atlanta kind of had a regression. I know last week they played the Panthers, so you can't look into it that much, but getting beat by 20 at home's never good, especially when you're a team like Atlanta that's certainly all in this year. Kirk Cousins threw 2 interceptions. Geno Smith had 2 touchdowns for 200 yards. Kenneth Walker had a touchdown. I believe Seattle got a defensive touchdown. Yeah, 64-yard defensive touchdown. Yeah, what are your thoughts on either Seattle or Atlanta in this game?
I didn't watch this game either, I'll be honest, but I don't really have much to say about it. I mean, Geno Smith looks pretty good. Sucks that DK Metcalf's out, but
that is a bummer because he's certainly one of the more entertaining players to watch. Seattle quietly sitting atop of the NFC West right now. They would be the 3 seed in the playoffs. I know you don't want to hear that, and we'll get to that game later. But yeah, that kind of wraps up that summary. Some other we'll go fast by the blowout games. Buffalo beats Tennessee 34-10. Doesn't really need to talk about that game. Josh Allen had a dominant game as usual, and what we saw was DeAndre Hopkins' last game in Tennessee. So, yeah,
got a touchdown in his Bills opener, so that's cool.
That's true. Yeah, Keon Coleman, the rookie, had 4 receptions for 125 yards. He's starting to develop into something. Maybe he can progress with Amari Cooper being there. It's only going to help him, I believe. But yeah, Bills moved to 5-2, 3-0 at home, and the Titans moved to a abysmal 1-5 to start their season. Moving on, Cincinnati and Cleveland. Nothing's really going on right in Cleveland right now. Cleveland loses 21-14. Joe Burrow has a decent game. Obviously, after the math, Deshaun Watson has to leave the game with a torn Achilles. So Cleveland's out their starter for the rest of the year, which me and Brock have been talking about the last few weeks. We've been wanting to see Jameis in there for a long time. We think he's a proven winner. Or not winner, but he's a better guy than what's being put out on the field right now.
In more ways than one, but I digress.
Right. But Bengals move back to 3-4 after their 0-4 start. They're certainly starting to climb back up the rankings. I mean, if there was ever going to be an 0-4 team to make the playoffs, I think you have to put Cincinnati up there just with how high-powered their offense is, how good Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase is. So, yeah, you got anything else to add to that game?
No, not really. But, yeah, I agree. I think they just took some time to figure out, for Cincinnati at least, they took some time to figure out how to run that offense without Joe Mixon. Obviously, he's doing great in Houston right now. But, yeah, I think they got it figured out. I would not be surprised to see them in the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Speaking of Houston, Houston suffers their second loss of the season to the Green Bay Packers. What I thought was a very entertaining game. I was one of the two games I was watching on the noon window, and boy, it was a good one. Ended in a game-winning 45-yard field goal by the recently signed kicker Brandon McManus, who's been an NFL veteran for I think the last 10 years. CJ Stroud only went 10 for 21 with 86 yards, but they were able to run the ball very effectively. 25 carries and 115 yards for Mixon. Jordan Love gets 3 touchdowns, 200 yards, has 2 interceptions. He's tied for first in interceptions in the league this year. So I don't know if that's a huge concern for the Packers because they're putting up points, and I think Jordan Love, you're going to live and die with his interceptions and his touchdowns. So I wouldn't be too concerned if I'm a Packers fan, but yeah, certainly one of the better games we had all weekend with two, I think, well, now they're 5-2 after the fact, but a really good game going into it. You got any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Jordan Love's a gunslinger. He's gonna throw some deep passes. You're gonna get touchdowns. You're gonna get picks. That's just the way the cards go there. I still think that the Texans are a really good team. I know the Packers aren't exactly doing like the best in the NFC North right now, but that's just a really good division. I don't really think there's a bad team in that division. So losing to the Packers, I don't think knocks you down too far.
No,
Like
and I think
two teams that can make the playoffs for sure.
right, and I think if the season ended today, I think every team from the NFC North would make the playoffs, which I think goes to show you the depth and the amount of good teams that are in that division. So, hey, we could have 3 NFC North teams or 4 NFC North teams in the playoffs, which would be interesting to see. I think it'd be the first time ever since they introduced the 7th team into the playoffs for each side. Other games, we had Indianapolis beating Miami. Again, this one wasn't too much to talk about. Richardson is still struggling to throw the ball down the field. I think I saw the stat since 2000. He is the lowest. He's the lowest completion percentage among all qualified quarterbacks at 46%.
I believe.
And I mean, you're gonna live and die with Richardson's decisions because he has the upside to be like a freak of nature Cam Newton style quarterback. But right now, his first few starts this year have not been what you wanted to see if you're a Colts fan. Miami, their offense is going to struggle. They do get Tua back this week, I believe, so hopefully that'll kickstart their offense again. But Miami being at 2-4, I'm sure that's not where they wanted to be at this point in the season. But yeah, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, you get Tua back. I think it's interesting in that press conference. He said he's not going to wear the Guardian cap. I don't know who's making the decisions in his camp. Why would you not at least try it? It looks goofy, sure, maybe. And come on, man. How many concussions have you had in the last like 2 seasons? You got to at least do something other than just say, "Yeah, I'm good, coach. Run another QB draw." Like, come on. But
Yeah,
if he can somehow stay healthy, I think that Miami offense is going to look how we expected it to look. But man, you got to find a way to keep him healthy. But he's not helping himself.
yeah, and keep in mind, at this point last year, Miami dropped 70 points on one team.
Yeah,
And I think the stat was through the first 4 or 5 games, they didn't drop 70 points as a team. So if that's a telltale sign of anything of how valuable Tua is to that team, I don't know what is.
yeah. And as a Tyreek Hill fantasy owner, I tell you what, I want Tua back. I want him to play as much as possible.
Right, and as someone that's playing Tyreek Hill in fantasy, I do not want to see him go for 300 yards like he has a few times in his career. Maybe not 300, but at least 200. I digress.
He's got some catching up to do.
Right. Going into what I think was the most entertaining game of the week, another NFC North match. Well, this is the only NFC North matchup, but 2 NFC North teams playing each other atop of the division right now. We have the Detroit Lions playing the Minnesota Vikings. Detroit squeaks out the win 31-29 on a 44-yard game-winning field goal. This was one of the more entertaining games all week. The Lions are dealing. They're on an incredible roll, except other than their game against the Bucs in week 2. They have just been clobbering teams. We saw what they did to the Cowboys a couple weeks ago. And they're continuing that path. Goff goes 22 of 25 for 2 touchdowns, no picks. Jahmyr Gibbs finally has started to find his groove as a running back, not just a receiving back out of the backfield. 15 carries, 116 yards, 2 touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 8 receptions, 112 yards, 1 touchdown. And then when you look at Minnesota, it's not like Minnesota had a bad game either. Sam Darnold throws for 259, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Aaron Jones gets 93 yards on the ground with a touchdown, and Justin Jefferson catches the sole touchdown for the Minnesota Vikings. I find it interesting. I don't know if you've seen the stat, but teams after they play Detroit, I think, are either winless or they only have 1 win on the season. And I'm looking ahead to this Thursday's game, Minnesota versus the Rams. I mean, is that not a huge trap game for Minnesota right there? Coming after a huge, tough game against the Lions, and then having to fly to LA and play the Rams 4 days later, 5 days later.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, if they keep Cooper Kupp, I definitely think there's some potential there. But I mean, yeah, I don't know why I said but. I have nothing else to add to that. I agree. I think there's definitely a chance for an upset there. I still think Minnesota's a top team in the league. I think they just ran into a really good Lions team. And I know David Montgomery got hurt for a little bit in that game, was able to get back in there. So glad to see that wasn't too major. But yeah, boy, the Lions. It is a good time to be an NFL fan when the Lions are good.
Right, and they've only been good the last 2 or 3 years that we've been watching them, but they've had some good teams with Stafford and Megatron in the past. And if you want to go way before me and Braden were even alive, the Barry Sanders teams, how I think in 93 or 92 they made the NFC title game. I think Detroit has real expectations this year, and I think you have to put them among some of the top teams in the NFL. But they're, 2 weeks before the trade deadline? They're still in need of pass rush with the loss of Hutchinson a week ago. Who knows if they make a move? I'm sure you saw, but there's a chance that Hutchinson could be back before the Super Bowl if they make it that far, which, I mean, I wouldn't want to push a severe injury like that, but if you're in the Super Bowl and that's your final game of the season, I think you got to test it. But we'll see what Detroit ends up doing this trade deadline.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the goal is to win a Super Bowl. So you got to do what you got to do to get that. But, man, at what cost?
Right. If it's one Super Bowl and Hutchinson doesn't play for the next year, I think that I don't know if Hutchinson would trade that, but I'm sure Detroit. I don't know. That's kind of a weird analogy, but I'm sure Detroit's really pushing hard for the Super Bowl this year. I wouldn't be shocked if they end up making a move. Some of the names I've seen out there is pass rushers, Zadarius Smith of the Browns. The Browns are kind of a dumpster fire right now with everything going on, not just the quarterback situation. So there are other names like Crosby. I don't see Crosby getting traded from the Raiders. I don't know if you do, but I certainly don't think that's going to happen. But look for the Lions to be aggressive in the next 2 weeks. That's my prediction. Moving on, another game that was in I think the 3:30 slot or the noon slot. Eagles beat the Giants 28-3. No, Boston Scott did not score a touchdown in this game as the Giants killer when he's on the Eagles. I don't even think Boston Scott is on the Eagles anymore, which is crazy because it always felt like he'd score a touchdown against the Giants. But yeah, nothing too much to write home about this game. Jalen Hurts only throws for 114 yards, but only passes it 14 times. It was really dominated by the run game of Saquon Barkley. 17 carries, 176 yards, 1 touchdown. Jalen Hurts adds 2 more rushing touchdowns of his own. And if you're the Giants, I mean, excuse me, you got to find a way to turn it around soon. Maybe I wouldn't think that Brian Dable would get canned this season, but man, it's not going in his favor so far. They do have offensive weapons in Lake Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson. They've had some injuries up front on the offensive line. I think Andrew Thomas is out for the year. But what do you think about the Eagles? What do you think about this game, and more specifically, what do you think about the Giants so far this season?
I mean, the Eagles aren't a bad team, but they're one of those, like, they will beat the crap out of a bad team and then lose mightily to a good team. So I'm not surprised to see what happened here. The Giants, like you said, they have offensive weapons, but their quarterback is Daniel Jones. So there's a ceiling as to what you can accomplish as an offense with that man under center. We've seen it, and it's not going to win you Super Bowls, that's for sure. As far as
Right.
Dable getting fired, I don't know. I mean, I can't see him getting fired this year. Maybe next year if they do another like 4, 5, 6 win season. But I think they give him at least one more year after this one. I don't think he's getting cut yet.
Right. I think New York is going to be one of the teams primed to make a quarterback selection in the first round next year. And there's a lot of good quarterbacks coming out. Obviously, it's Shedeur Sanders. You got Cam Ward, Quinn Ewers. You got guys like that. And I know I'm missing some names off the top of my head, but New York can really, they have an opportunity to get their guy of the future if they want, because I don't think Daniel Jones is the quarterback of the future. I know you don't think Daniel Jones is the quarterback of the future. We've been on this before. So if you're the Giants, this is something you got to look into sooner rather than later. Otherwise, you're going to end up wasting away Malik Neighbors, who looks like a stud, who looks like arguably the best receiver out of this draft class, which I don't know if many of us thought going in, especially with Marv being in that class. So if you're the Giants, you got to make them change, or you got to hope stuff goes the right direction. Otherwise, you're going to be in the same spot next year with the same offense, and it's not good if you're the Giants. Just put it at that. Couple more games on Sunday. We had the Rams beating the Raiders 20-15. I don't know too much to say about this game. I wasn't watching this game personally, so I can't have too much input on it. But the Rams finally pick up another win, moving to 2-4 on the year, and the Raiders drop another one, going to 2-5. I think for the Rams, it's just they've had so many bad injuries, and you would hope that they'd be better when everyone gets back. I know, like we mentioned before, Kupp is projected to play this Thursday, which is going to help them out a lot. Who knows when Puka Nacua is going to be able to come back? I saw that he was practicing again, so he's got at least a couple weeks to figure out if he's going to be ready for some game action. But if you're a Rams fan, is it kind of too late already being 2-4 and still having all these injuries? What do you think?
I mean, as long as there's time, there's still, 9 weeks left in the season.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's not too late, but it's not looking great. You'd have to win probably a good 7 or 8 games at least in order to even be in the conversation. But can they do that? I don't know.
Yeah, and I just pulled up the Rams schedule. So obviously we talked about it. They have Minnesota this Thursday. Then they're at Seattle. Then they're home Miami for a Monday night game. At New England, which should be a win because New England isn't looking great. And then home Philadelphia. So they got a couple tough games, but I think this is a time where they can rattle off a few wins, especially since a team like Miami, who I think is, I wouldn't say they're trending down, especially with Tua coming back, but we don't know what the Dolphins are going to look like with Tua coming back. It could be a rough few weeks for them, so maybe you're able to pick up a win there. Seattle was no slump. Seattle's been playing well. I mean, they're not playing like a top 5 team in the NFL, but they're not playing like a rollover team. But yeah, if you're a Rams fan, you would like to see, I guess I'm not speaking for all Rams fans when I say this, I would like to see Cooper Kupp stay with the Rams. I think him and Stafford is an electric connection, but who knows? We could be talking next week or the week after, and we could be saying, oh, Cooper Kupp's on his way to Pittsburgh, or he's on his way to some other team that's not named right now. But yeah, if you're a Rams, I guess I didn't even really talk about the Raiders, but the Raiders know what direction they're at. As soon as they traded away Devontae, they know where they're going this year. So I'm not going to touch on them too much. But
I think AOC did get hurt, which sucks. Especially they're trying to get their young guys some reps, but I think they're going to get a quarterback in the draft. They're in that conversation as well as New York. But as far as going back to your Matthew Stafford Cooper Kupp connection, that's a good connection. But Stafford's 36. How much longer do you have him on your team? So I mean, and Cooper Kupp is 29, 28, I believe.
31.
31. Oh,
yep.
Exactly. So how much more time are you going to have with him and having trade value? Do you trade him now? Well, I mean, there's a possibility you make the playoffs and get decent value out of him, or do you trade him when he's 33, 34 years old? And I mean, you're looking at late round picks. I mean,
Right,
the Rams
and
have never been one to value picks, but I mean, at some point, you got to rebuild somewhere.
right, and I know the Rams' supposed asking price is a second round pick. Who knows if they'll end up getting a second round pick? I bet if they eat the majority, if not all, of the salary, I guarantee they'd get a third or a second round pick for a contending team. With Kansas City making that move for D Hop, I think that lessens his market. I think now you're looking at teams like a Pittsburgh. Who else is in desperate need of a receiver? Pittsburgh's really the only one that comes off to mind. Hold on.
Yeah, Pittsburgh could really use a Deontay Johnson right about now. I tell you what.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, off the top of my head, yeah, no, I can't. Yeah, no. It's pretty much Pittsburgh or nothing.
I'm really just seeing. I'm also seeing Lions. That wouldn't be a terrible move. You pair him with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameer Gibbs and
Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams is out for a couple weeks, but like, he's not a bad wide receiver too. Because if you're trading for Cooper Kupp, he's not going to be the wide receiver one. He's just not.
He's past that point in his career.
So, like, is it worth trading a third, second round pick for not like a slight upgrade? Cooper Kupp is a really good receiver. No disrespect to Jameson Williams, but I mean, is that worth it to trade a second round pick for 2 years to Cooper Kupp? 2-3 years maybe.
Right. Some of the other teams I see that I didn't even think of that are, I think, home run picks if they're able to get them. Washington. You're going to keep developing Jaden. You're going to give him another weapon. That's an opportunity. I don't know what their cap situation looks like, so I can't really go too in depth on that. But I feel like Washington could easily make that move and still have draft capital and still have salary cap space. And then the other one that I don't know why I didn't even think of this, especially after watching Monday night, the Bucks, because they have no receivers right now.
Yeah.
Like Mike Evans is out at least 2 or 3 weeks. Godwin's out the year. And now you're relying on guys like Trey Palmer and Jalen McMillan. Like, maybe if you're the Bucks, you're the ones that are like, hey, we'll trade you that second or third round pick because we believe in our roster. We believe Baker's going to lead us to the playoffs. Because I think that they're tied for number one in that division. I don't know if that's let me verify that before I speak too outlandish. But
yeah, I don't know.
They're tied for first right now. They're tied for first right now. So I think you could certainly make a push if you are the Bucks. But man, time will tell in the next 2 weeks whether or not Kupp is dealed and whether or not he stays. But moving on to another game that was, I think this was the 3:30 slot. Oh boy, the Panthers. They might be one of the worst teams I think I've ever seen. Is that a crazy take?
No, I don't think that's that ridiculous to say. I mean, I don't know how on earth you get the number one overall, have the number one overall pick the year before. Don't get the pick with that pick, and then are worse the next year. How?
Right, and it's not looking great if you're a Panthers fan. I know Andy Dalton got hurt in this game, and I know that Bryce Young's probably going to start on Sunday. So who knows what's going to happen with that? But
I believe Andy Dalton got into a car accident. I think that's what happened with him. He hurt his thumb in a car accident.
Okay, so
I believe I just saw that. So, yep. But Andy Dalton Bryce Young will be starting next week. So we'll be interested to see if he gets his redemption arc. But I mean, you're still on the Panthers. So
right, and final score of this one is Washington 40, Carolina 7. I think the big news out of this game is Jaden Daniels went down like fairly early into this game.
Yeah.
His stats for the game were only 2 for 2, 6 passing yards, and then he had 3 carries. He did have 50 yards on the ground, 1 46-yard run that helps out that. But Mariota, shout out Marcus Mariota. I mean, we're just getting the 2015 quarterback class back. We're getting Jameis and Mariota. I love it. Mariota goes 18 to 23, 2 touchdowns, no picks. That's a QBR of 64.8. I mean, that's pretty good for Mariota, who hasn't really played meaningful football in a couple of years. So Good
Boy,
for him.
we get a new college football game, and then our old legends from NCAA 14 are coming
No,
back and killing it. You
no
gotta love
kidding.
it.
I Mariota when he was in Tennessee was one of my favorite players and was one of the most fun players to use in Madden because he was always super fast and he always had a good throwing release and it's good to see him out on the field. I think if you're a Commanders fan, I think you don't want to see him on the field because that means something's up with Jaden.
No.
But I think Jaden's going to be back this week. I don't think the injury is that severe.
I hope so. He's so fun to watch. You hate to see him sidelined for more than he has to be, but you also you don't want him to get hurt. You know,
Right? You don't.
Washington's history with mobile QBs and getting hurt. So
We don't.
any
One,
Washington fan is getting flashbacks and would probably want him to rest up and be as healthy as possible. I'd have to imagine.
I couldn't agree more, and we don't even need to say the name of the quarterback that happened to because I think Washington fans would just
if you're
be upset
watching
with
this
us.
podcast, you know who we're talking about.
Right. The Sunday night game, Pittsburgh dominating win, 37-15 over the Jets. Rodgers and Adams' first game back together since 2021. I think the NFC title game, or no, NFC divisional, right? Where the Niners beat them.
Yeah,
that sound right?
I believe that does sound right. I believe so.
Where Niners got a I remember this game vividly because I remember the Niners getting a blocked punt, and I was talked like the Packers have horrible special teams, and it ended up biting them and costing them their season. I digress. Pittsburgh gets their first win with Russ under center. Russ has a good game, 16 of 29, 264, 2 passing touchdowns. Rodgers, on the other hand, 24 of 39, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, quarterback rating of 50.6. Man, the Jets can't get any sort of run game going. Like, they only had 54 yards on the ground as a team. Granted, I know you're playing Pittsburgh, so you can get a pass this week for me because Pittsburgh's feels like the last 10 years they've had a top 5 defense. I don't know how they keep doing it. Mike Tomlin's doing something in Pittsburgh that a lot of teams need to be taking note of. But is it concerning to you? Yeah, is it concerning to you that they were blown out in this game against Pittsburgh? Or do you think it was just first game for Devontae and Aaron? It's going to take some time getting used to, and the Jets are on their trajectory upwards.
No, I mean, you look at all their games. You look at the Jets this season before Davante Adams. You knew Davante Adams was not going to fix their problems. Their problems really were not in their weapons. Davante Adams is just a little piece to make Aaron Rodgers happy while they're not winning games. That's all that was. I don't know how many more games Davante Adams wins them. It's when their offensive line is looking like that. The run game as a whole just isn't good. Defense is especially with their defensive-minded head coach out the door. Who would have thought you lose Robert Saleh and your defense gets worse? Wow.
No kidding. Who do you think was the leading receiver for the Jets on Sunday? You probably know the answer, but for those that don't know the answer.
I didn't look at the box score. I'm gonna guess if you're asking me, is that Alan Lazard?
Breece Hall.
Oh!
6 receptions, 103 yards. So.
Oh. Yeah. I mean, we all knew they traded for Davante Adams to unlock the receiving prowess of a Breece Hall.
Right, that makes a lot of sense.
Shout out the man.
That makes a lot of sense if you're a Jets fan or a fan of the Jets somehow. But all right, we got to talk about it. And I know you don't want to, but we have to. Chiefs Niners, 28-18. Yeah, Super Bowl rematch. A lot of anticipation. A lot of injuries in this game. Both sides of the ball. Yeah. Some worse than others. Some team got affected a little bit more than others. But what were your thoughts in this game? I'll give you the floor right away.
I don't know. There are not words in the English language to describe how I feel about both of these teams. The devil is real. He wears 15 and plays in Kansas City. I don't know how he keeps getting away with this. His wide receiver 1 is a 34-year-old Travis Kelce. who doesn't even care about football anymore. And he can still go in and win against any team in the NFL. They have not lost. Every single week, it feels like we're saying, oh, the Chiefs don't have any wide receivers. Patrick Mahomes has more interceptions than touchdowns. There's no way that the Chiefs are going to win this game. Not even that Patrick Mahomes is winning these games for them, but Kansas City just finds a way to win every time, and it makes me more mad every time. Oh my
man.
Lord. It does not matter how many injuries you have, you will win games because it's devil voodoo magic. And I someone needs to get a priest because we need an exorcism in Kansas City. It's too much. Long rant for somebody that's a Niners fan for the Niner game, but simply I don't want to talk about it because, I mean, Deebo Samuel had fluid in his lungs, did not play in the game because he had pneumonia. Yeah. And Brandon Ayuk played, a quarter and a half and then tore his ACL, whatever it was. He's out for the year. Your wide receiver core is Ricky Pearsall, which shout out Ricky Pearsall for making it back. I mean, he got shot and made it back before Christian McCaffrey. So you got Ricky Pearsall, Jacob Cowan, Chris Conley, and Ronnie Bell was your wide receiver core. George Kittle needed to get a lot of targets, and he did. But Kyle Shanahan cannot coach against the Chiefs. Never has. Probably never will. Yeah. A lot of injuries, a lot of pain. I've said my piece.
All right.
You can take your victory lap now.
Yeah, as a Chiefs fan, it's a little concerning that Mahomes is throwing more picks than touchdowns, but Kansas City right now is relying so heavy on their defense, and rightfully so. I think it's arguably the best defense in the league. I think Spags, I don't know what he does to the defense, but he sends the most exotic and crazy blitzes I think I've ever seen. And you know when it's 3rd and long and it's an obvious passing down that Steve Spagnuolo is sending at least 7 blitzers. And it's just going to be, well, if you can get the throw off, good luck, but you're not going to get it off with Chris Jones and everyone rushing you. So I don't know what Spags does or how he's able to keep doing it, but Chiefs are 6-0. Leading receiver, if you want to take a guess on that for Kansas City?
I could not tell you.
It's not a receiver, or it's not a wide receiver, and it's not a running back. It's Noah Gray. Shout out Noah Gray. 4 receptions, 66 yards.
I did see him on the TV a lot. I was thinking in the back of my head, like, man, is Noah Gray better than Travis Kelce right now? Is that what I'm seeing on my TV screen? Hey, and there were times where it looked like it.
Hey, that's why Kansas City extended him back in November. They wanted him around for the next few years. I think where I'm most excited to see, Kareem Hunt is back only 6 years later with Kansas City, where it should have been all along. It just makes me so happy because when Kareem was with the Chiefs, he was one of my favorite players. And obviously, he had the situation which ended up getting him cut from the team. But now, I mean, you look at his stats on Sunday, 22 carries, 78 yards, 3.5 yards carry, which isn't great. But it felt like every time there needed to be a huge run, he was able to pick up that run on 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 2nd and 1, any sort of down and distance. So, yeah, I can't wait to see what this Chiefs offense looks like next week with Hopkins and all the weapons added, but we will see. We had 2 games on Monday night this week, which I don't know if you are a fan of, but I'm certainly a fan of. I like seeing back-to-back games. Not, though, when it's on ESPN+. I hate that, even though I didn't really watch the Cardinals and Chargers game that closely. But we'll start off with the first one. Ravens-Bucks. Ravens win 41-31. Ravens are they the most dominant team in the NFL right now?
There's a case to be made. They certainly have the most dominant run game. No doubt about that. Lamar Jackson is finding himself in another MVP conversation. Yeah, I think if they don't win a Super Bowl here in the next couple of years, then oh boy, that's just sad to see because there's just so much talent on that team. If they can put it together in the postseason, it could be magical.
Right, and they looked unstoppable. I know they started off slow. They were down 10-0 to start the game, but then scored 17 in the second quarter, 17 in the third quarter, and then scored another touchdown in the fourth. Lamar had as many passing touchdowns as he did incompletions. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah,
And
that's a good key to
and
success.
almost had a perfect passer rating at 158.1. And for reference, a perfect passer rating is 158.3. So he's zero point 0.2 off, which I think is pretty remarkable. I think the big storyline of this game, though, is the injuries to the wide receiver core of Tampa Bay. Mike Evans goes out early with a hamstring injury. He will be back in the next few weeks, it sounds like. But I think the more devastating one and kind of the mind-boggling one to say, why was Chris Godwin in that game when that game was over? Todd Bowles,
Yeah,
buddy, what are we
I
doing?
don't know, man. I mean, the Ravens have put their backups in. The You were down 10 with 50 seconds left. You're not going to win that game. Why are you why are the starters still in the game? That is exactly why you don't do that. Like in the handbook, this is how to be a coach in the NFL. That is on the first page. You do not keep your starters in when the game is over because they will eventually get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And now if you don't make a trade for a wide receiver,
Yeah.
congratulations, Atlanta, you're in the playoffs.
Yeah, no kidding, because everyone else in that division it's rough.
The Bucks are done.
Yeah.
It's Baker Mayfield, Cade Otton, and the wide receivers against the world, or in the running
Well,
backs. Excuse me.
yeah, I was gonna say the running backs had a huge game on in the air for him. Rashad White, who proud fantasy owner of, it's been a struggle this year, but good first good game in a while. 6 receptions, 71 yards, 2 touchdowns for Tampa Bay, and Bucky Irving even getting in the passing game at 3 receptions and 54 yards. I know it's gonna be rough with not having your dominant wide receivers, but man, I mean, you can at least count on a couple playmakers for him, especially like K. Dot and Rashad White. And we'll see. I'm fairly confident they'll make a move. I just don't know how soon they'll make it.
Yeah, even if they do, I mean, you could just tell when they were up 10, like Buff started super hot when they had Mike Evans. Mike Evans got that touchdown. They had Mike Evans when they were able to get down the field. As soon as they lost Mike Evans, it's like a switch flipped on that entire team. The whole morale just changed. It's like they just admitted defeat right there. So hope they can get him back soon, because if they don't and they don't have that team leader out there on the field, oof, you're not. It's going to be rough out there, in Tampa Bay.
Yep. And the last game of the week, I'm not going to really touch on this one too much unless you want to. Arizona wins 17-15. For Brock's sake, cool. Brock's a Cardinals fan. I don't know if you knew that, but
I believe
he's one of
I did
two
know
Cardinals fans. Ended up on a walk-off field goal. Yeah, do you have anything else to add on that one?
Yeah, no, no, I don't
Fair
have much
enough.
to say about that. Hey, I think Hayden Hurst got hurt. Will Dissly did pretty well in his spot.
Yeah.
But no, not really two teams that I care that much about, respectfully.
All right. We're going to do something that me and Brock have been doing the last few weeks. We're going to unveil our power rankings. First up is Braden's power rankings. I'll let you do most of the talking on that and how you rank your teams.
Yeah, I mean, the only undefeated team left, you got to put them at number one. They don't win pretty, but they win games. Doesn't matter how many injuries. Doesn't matter how bad the greatest quarterback of all time plays. They're still going to win games because Steve Spagnuolo is just he's going to stop your favorite team every time, point blank. Detroit beats the second to last undefeated team remaining. They look insane. Jake Bates, what a guy. What a story, honestly. Goes from the UFL, I believe. I don't know for sure if that's the name of the league.
Yep.
But
XFL.
XFL. That's what they're calling it now. Hadn't kicked in like 5 years before that. Is a stud in the XFL. Gets signed to the
UFL.
Lions.
I was wrong. It's UFL. Brock's going to get mad at me.
Right.
Sorry.
Was I right the first time? Come on, man.
I know. My bad.
Making me look bad out here. XFL is killing in there. Gets signed to the Lions. Is winning games for the best team in the NFC North. Oh, man. Yeah, Lions look really good. Ravens, don't let the final score fool you. That was a evisceration. Granted, Buccaneers had a lot of injuries, like we just said, but the Ravens, man, they look unstoppable. They lost those 2 games at the beginning of the year and have not lost since. They look incredible. The Vikings, yeah, they're coming off a loss to Detroit, but I still think that they are a really, really good team. I would not be surprised if they win a couple games in the playoffs. Sam Darnold. Who would have thought Brock Purdy's backup last year would turn around and become an MVP candidate on his own? I mean, yeah, what's there not to like in Minnesota right now, other than losing to Detroit, which as of like recent history has not been a sentence said much, but somehow not a bad thing anymore. And then that 5 spot, when I tell you I spent a good hour trying to figure out that 5 spot, there are so many good teams in the NFL. It's hard to pick a 5. Uh, I mean, you got the Texans. The Texans lost. They would have been my 5 spot had they not have lost that game to the Packers. I mean, you got the Commanders. They look really good. I mean, you got a lot of really good teams, but I think the Buffalo Bills, they were looking good before they got Amari Cooper. They have Amari Cooper, and they look even better. Going to be really fun to see what that Josh Allen to Amari connection looks like. Yeah, another team that's going to do great things in the playoffs.
Yeah, great power rankings. I realized I forgot to post the ones of last week, but that's all right. Here are my power rankings. All right, I've been wanting to put this. I'll go in numeric order. My bad. Unless Kansas City loses the game, they're at number 1. I'm not going to go too in depth on that because we've been talking about the Chiefs pretty much a lot of this episode. Ravens. I mean, since week 3, they have been the best team in the NFL. But I think the entirety of the season, Kansas City's been the best team in the NFL. So I think for that reason, Kansas City's still number 1. Ravens, though, are looking as explosive as an offense I think I've seen in a while with the running game and the passing game they're able to have. So they're my number 2 team. Detroit wins another really impressive win over Minnesota. Yeah, I think Detroit's I think Detroit's the best NFC team that's out there. So for that reason, I think Detroit's number 1 or 3. I've been waiting to put this team on the power rankings all year. My preseason Super Bowl pick. I think the Green Bay Packers have finally figured it out. I know Jordan Love has a little bit of an interception issue. I think the Packers are still going to overcome that. They have a lot of weapons on offense. Their defense has been really good. And for that reason, the Packers got to go at 4. And at number 5, I couldn't take this team off, even though they lost this week, because I think this team is still really good. I think this team's still going to make a deep push in the playoffs, and that's the Houston Texans. I know Stroud had a rough game this past Sunday. I don't think that's an indication of anything. I think that was just playing a really good defense in Green Bay. So yeah, those are my power rankings for everyone listening and watching. Mine is Kansas City at 1, Baltimore at 2, Detroit at 3, Green Bay at 4, Houston at 5, and for Braden, it's Kansas City at 1, Detroit at 2, Baltimore 3, Minnesota 4, and Buffalo at 5. All right. And then the last little thing we'll talk about, looking into the games this upcoming week. We've already kind of touched on the game this Thursday. I feel like we've been getting some rough Thursday games. Like, I mean, I usually get,
man.
Yeah. Oh man, I think this is the first time we'll get a semi-decent Thursday night game since that Falcons Buccaneers game. That was a really entertaining game to watch.
That was
Minnesota and the Rams. Cup's supposed to be back this week. Kind of a must-win for the Rams. You don't want to fall down 2-5. Then you're really looking south for your season. Whereas Minnesota, this might be a trap game for them. I wouldn't say that with how good I think how good the Rams are. I think the Rams have a really good roster, but certainly a game that's going to be entertaining to watch this Thursday. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Some of the other games this week, we got Philly at Cincinnati. I feel like that should be one of the better games of the week. Cincinnati on the upward trajectory, and Philly, I don't know what's going on with Philly. We got Sirianni yelling at fans, and who knows what's actually going on within Philly. Man, we have a rematch of Bucks Falcons, like I was mentioned earlier, in the noon slot. Man, we don't really have that many great games this week. Seattle and Buffalo. I mean, that's an okay game, I guess.
It's not bad.
Dallas and San Fran is the Sunday night game, which is always an entertaining watch, especially since the Cowboys seem to never beat the Niners, even in the playoffs. There's been a couple moments that I can think of. I think of Dak Prescott pulling a quarterback draw with 13 seconds left. And real quick, Will Howard pulled that same thing a couple weeks ago. Buddy, what are you doing? Don't don't do a QB slide with 6 seconds left in the game. I digress. And then there's the one where the last play of the game is Zeke snapping the ball at center. Which
Zeke at center. Yeah, that's my favorite personally.
That one's the funniest one for sure.
Fred Warner just sends him to the Earth's core. That's I mean,
and Kevontae Turpin.
You talk about the Cowboys in the playoffs in the last decade. That's what you think of.
And then that same play, Kevontae Turpin gets absolutely blown up by, I think, Greenlaw. I don't know. I'd have to rewatch that highlight, but that's the one I first think of. And I think last regular season, you guys beat him by 20, I want to say, or 30.
A lot of points.
Yeah, a lot of points were scored. A game I forgot to even mention that I think is going to be really good. Bears and Commanders. Number 1 overall pick versus number 2 overall pick.
Hopefully number 2 overall pick if he's there. But
hopefully Jaden's back. Bears are a team that's trending. Caleb Williams is playing good football. You take his first 2.5 games out of it, he's played a lot of good football in a row. Hopefully he can string that together. With Jaden's been playing well all year. Hopefully he gets to play because, like you said earlier, one of the most electrifying players in the sport right now. I think he's still top 5 in MVP odds, which is crazy impressive by a rookie. But yeah, that's definitely going to be one of the games I circle for my for the 3:30 slot for me. And the Monday night game this week it's kind of bad. It's Pittsburgh and the Giants. I don't know how in depth I'll be watching that game, but it's football. Can't really complain at this point because we're going to blink and it's already going to be the end of February and we're going to have no more football. So you got to take every game and watch it like it's your last.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's going to be May before you know it, and you're going to be wishing you had a Pittsburgh versus New York game to watch right about that.
Right. Yeah. Who's Iowa State play this week?
We're on a bye this week.
So there you go.
Can't lose.
All the way up to number 10 in the country. Is that right?
Yes, I believe we did lose a spot. We were at 9 and then barely walk away by the skin of our teeth against a feisty UCF team
that doesn't throw the ball ever. They just run the ball.
No, they just run the ball. We have no linebackers. I mean, shout out the freshmen that have been coming up clutch. Those 7th and 8th string linebackers. Shout out those guys and shout out John Heacock, my man.
Yeah, I always see the tweets from Iowa State fans that it's like, you are an Iowa State linebacker with how many injuries they've had at the linebacker position this year. But yeah, 7-0, first time since 1938,
I believe is the number.
Wow. Before the U.S. got involved in World War II, put it that way.
Great Depression.
Yeah. Crazy times to live in. And we don't even need to talk about Iowa's game because they just laid a complete egg on the primetime slot. One of the most frustrating games I've seen as a Hawk fan. Couldn't tackle, and when you have Cade McNamara throwing the ball, it is always painful to watch. So yeah, shout out Caleb Johnson for getting another touchdown. Hey, I mean, if it wasn't for Ashton Genty, I would say Caleb's the best running back in college football, but Ashton Genty is still doing his thing. He's got 1,200 yards. Yeah, 16 or 17 touchdowns? And what's insane is his lines, like his yardage line for each game is like 200 yards. And his odds to score touchdown is like minus 2,000.
Yeah, if you want to find plus odds on an Ashton Genty stat, it has to be like to score 3 plus touchdowns, I think.
The NCAA record. I think it was either last week they didn't play. It was the week before then. You could bet on him to break the rushing yard record in a game. And it was like plus 500 or 600. And I think the record, as we speak, is like
insane.
430 yards, set by. Is that Samaje Perine that holds that record?
That sounds right. I don't really keep my finger on the pulse of college records that much.
Samaje Perine against Kansas.
Man,
that was a crazy poll. Kansas City Chief legend.
Good pull.
But yeah,
Ball knowledge right there. It's my boy.
Yep. So Iowa State on a bye this week. Iowa's got a hopefully an easy game against Northwestern. I guess I can't guarantee too much after dropping the ball. Homecoming this week.
Northwestern. Oh man.
Yeah.
Kirk Ferentz.
I will disappear from the podcast for a couple weeks. Just have that be. But yeah.
I got my equipment, so if Brock needs me, hey.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You might have to fill in for me a few weeks if Iowa drops this one. But yeah, kind of to wrap it up. Another episode of the Sports Nerds in the Book. We are almost 8 weeks in the NFL season, or is this week? Yeah, this is week 8 coming up.
Yeah, this is week 8 coming up. We just watched week 7.
Crazy how fast time's flying by. NBA got games going on right now. I think last I checked, my Cavs were up 20.5, which love to see as a Cavs fan. Got the Mitchell jersey.
Let me check how the Bulls are doing.
Yeah. But yeah, entertaining time. World Series Game 1 starts on Friday. I'm not usually a baseball guy, but Yankees Dodgers. I mean, Shohei Ohtani versus Aaron Judge. I'll have to tune in for a little bit of that game. Hockey's going on. I mean, prime sports season is right now. It is October to November. That's when college football games get good. The NFL, players are starting. We've already seen it the last few weeks. NBA, we've already seen Joel Embiid miss games without an injury. He's just missing games.
Yeah, that must not be working.
But yeah, crazy times. Yeah, that's all I really got to add. You got anything else to add? First episode on the 515 podcast. Braden, how'd it go?
I mean, I had a good time. If you need me back, let me know. I'd be more than happy to hop on.
Absolutely. Well, for Braden Beenken, I'm Dawson Livingston. We are the Sports Nerds signing off.